It's kind of hard to imagine life without the internet these days, isn't it?
Oh, totally.
I mean, keeping in touch, learning stuff, even, looking into spiritual things, it's just everywhere.
It really is.
And it makes you wonder how more traditional organizations, especially ones with a long history, are handling this shift. How do they connect online?
Yeah, it's a huge question. It's full of potential, but also real strategic hurdles.
Right. How do you use these new tools but still stay true to your, core mission?
Exactly. Your values, the things that have guided you for maybe generations.
Well, that's pretty much exactly what we're diving into today. We've got some really interesting material from the Seventh-day Adventist Church's General Conference spring meetings.
Right, the ones held back in April in Silver Spring.
Yeah. And a big part of those meetings was approving these brand new guidelines specifically for expanding their mission digitally.
So for our deep dive, we're looking at a couple of things. There's a report from the TED New WS Network. They summarize the meetings. And then we have the actual document, the guidelines for the digital expansion of mission.
Okay. And just for context, for anyone maybe less familiar, the Adventist Church's main focus, their mission, is basically helping people understand the Bible to find freedom, healing, and hope in Jesus.
So this digital expansion, it's really about finding ways to use online tools strategically to share that specific message with more people.
Makes sense. So it's not just being online for the sake of it.
Not at all. These guidelines seem like a very deliberate and thought-out plan for weaving digital tools into what they're already trying to do.
Gotcha. Okay, so what's the plan for this deep dive? Where are we headed?
Well, first, we should probably touch on the financial situation they discussed, because that sort of sets the stage for these guidelines.
Okay, the money side first.
They will get into the nitty-gritty of their strategy, this three-phase approach to digital ministry they've outlined.
3 phases, right.
We'll also look at how they're thinking about people connecting remotely, like from different places, and how membership works there.
That's interesting.
And importantly, why they still see physical in-person gatherings as, well, absolutely crucial.
So digital tools, but not forgetting the face-to-face stuff.
Exactly. It looks like a really comprehensive plan, covering the how-to, but also the why.
All right, let's start with the foundation then, the financials. Sounds like the treasurer, Paul Douglas, had some positive news.
He did, yeah. Despite, all the economic uncertainty globally, they ended 2024 in a strong position. About US $338 million in net assets.
Wow. Okay.
And the really notable part is that 94% of that was in cash and investments. So very liquid, very stable.
That's definitely secure footing. And it sounds like they saw this less as just good management and more as, a blessing.
That was definitely the tone, a real sense of gratitude for what they termed God's provision. But what's interesting is how the money came in. There was a shift.
Shift? How so?
Well, tithe, that's a traditional form of giving, usually a percentage of income. It used to be the bulk of the budget, like 58% back in 2020.
Okay.
But by 2024, it had dropped to 45%.
Huh, that's quite a change. So where did the rest come from? Or was the budget just smaller?
No, that's an interesting part. Offerings, so other types of giving beyond the standard tithe actually went up. They exceeded expectations.
Really?
Yeah. And church leaders, like Marcos Bonfim, the stewardship director, they sort of interpreted this as maybe a sign of renewed excitement about the church's global mission work.
So maybe people giving more specifically to projects they felt connected to.
That seems to be the thinking. Bonfim called the growth in offerings a dream. It suggests maybe people are feeling more engaged with specific mission projects, something digital platforms could definitely help showcase, right?
That makes a lot of sense. You can see the impact more directly online sometimes, and it sounds like they're putting money behind that mission focus too.
Definitely. The report mentioned, I think, $6.7 million earmarked for local church projects just for 2025.
Okay.
And they're funding evangelistic campaigns in different regions and apparently getting real results. Thousands of Bible studies, hundreds of baptisms in some areas,
Wow.
even over 1 million points of contact in East Central Africa, and thousands of proclamation sites in North America.
Those are big numbers. Clearly a strong push on outreach. You mentioned tithe parity efforts briefly too. What's that about?
Right. Tithe parity is basically an internal initiative. They want all their regional administrative areas, conferences, missions to contribute the same percentage of their tithe income to the main Central General Conference by 2030.
So making the funding system more equitable across the board.
Exactly. strengthens the whole system for global mission work.
Okay, so putting it all together, they're financially stable, maybe even seeing a shift towards more mission-focused giving. It really does paint a picture of an organization feeling ready to expand its reach.
Precisely. That financial stability and mission focus is the backdrop. It shows they feel they have the capacity and the drive, which leads right into why they developed these digital expansion guidelines.
It's about using those resources effectively, digitally.
You got it. Maximizing the potential.
All right, let's get into the guidelines themselves then. This 3-phase strategy for digital ministry.
Yeah, it's quite structured. It gives local churches a kind of pathway to build up their digital presence step by step.
Okay, phase 1, digital platform. Sounds like the starting point. What's involved there?
Phase 1 is pretty foundational. It's about getting every local church to regularly post content on at least one digital platform.
Like a website or social media?
Exactly. Could be a website, Facebook, Instagram, maybe even a podcast. The main thing is consistency, establishing that reliable online touchpoint.
Just getting something out there regularly. Is there guidance on what they should post?
Oh, absolutely. The guidelines are clear that the communication department needs to ensure everything put out is, well, first, well-designed and relevant.
Makes sense.
But also, it needs to be engaging, encourage interaction. And this is key. Be biblically accurate and totally in line with Adventist beliefs.
So quality control is built in. It's not just posting anything.
Right. It has to have purpose and reflect their core principles.
Okay, so that's the base layer. What is phase 2, digital streaming, ad?
Phase 2 builds on that. Once you've got your platform going, the next step is to start streaming services online.
Like the main church service?
Yeah, main worship service, but also things like Sabbath School. That's their weekly Bible study prayer meetings, maybe youth groups, other Bible studies, basically making their regular activities accessible online.
That opens things up a lot for people who can't physically be there.
For sure. It dramatically increases accessibility.
Then comes phase 3, digital pastoral care. This sounds deeper, more interactive.
It is. This phase is about actively providing spiritual support and care to people connecting remotely.
How does that work in practice?
Things like digital visitation, so reaching out intentionally via calls or messages, also setting up online prayer groups, virtual Bible studies, small online communities for fellowship, even offering training digitally.
So it's really moving from just broadcasting to people to actually ministering with them online.
Exactly. Nurturing relationships, fostering spiritual growth in that digital space.
And I think you mentioned even in phase 3, they're still supposed to offer in-person opportunities too.
Yes, that's a really important point in the guidelines. Churches reaching phase 3 are expected to provide ways for people to engage both online and in person, and to keep supporting actual missionary work.
So the digital doesn't replace the physical, even at the highest phase.
Correct. And the document is careful to say these phases aren't like a ranking. It's not about which church is best.
Right, just a framework for growth.
Yeah, a strategic roadmap churches can adapt based on their own situation, their resources, their digital skills. It's meant to be flexible.
That seems very practical. Okay, so one of the really interesting bits is how they handle people connecting digitally from, well, potentially anywhere. How does membership work if someone's not local?
Yeah, this is a tricky area for a lot of groups, and they've clearly put thought into it. The guidelines strongly encourage people, first and foremost, to join a local church in their own community.
Even if it takes some effort.
Yes, even if it requires, as they put it, some sacrifice. The idea is that local fellowship, that physical community support and accountability is really foundational.
So they really value that local in-person connection.
Hugely. But they also acknowledge reality. Sometimes people just can't connect locally for whatever reason.
Right.
So for those churches that have reached phase 3, the ones really equipped for digital pastoral care, their regional conference or mission can officially recognize them as being able to accept members from outside their local area.
Ah, okay. So it's an exception, not the rule, and only for churches set up to handle it.
Precisely. And even then, they still have to follow all the existing rules for membership that are already in their church manual.
Got it. So if someone does become a remote member, how involved can they actually be?
Quite involved, actually.
Mm-hmm.
The guidelines say remote members are encouraged to participate actively. They could lead online prayer meetings, run virtual Bible study groups, teach online Sabbath school classes.
So real contribution is possible remotely.
Yes, and get this, they could even hold church office, provided the main duties can be done digitally, like helping with communications or digital care.
Wow, that's quite progressive. It really shows that service isn't just about physical presence anymore.
It does. It acknowledges that meaningful contribution can happen through digital means.
What about practical things like giving tithe and offerings for these remote members?
The encouragement is to send it to their home church, the one they're a member of, using digital methods if possible.
Okay.
But if that's just not practical, the advice is to send it to the nearest local conference or mission office in their own geographical area.
Yeah. So the resources still support the church's work somewhere.
Exactly. It's adaptable. And interestingly, they also encourage these remote members to still try and connect locally.
How so, even if they're members elsewhere?
Yeah, they encourage them to engage with people in their own neighborhoods, maybe start a small group in their home, a branch Sabbath school.
Oh, interesting.
Potentially even leading to planting a new church eventually, with support from the local conference or mission, of course.
So the digital connection could actually spark local physical ministry.
That seems to be the hope. It's not meant to pull people away from local engagement, but maybe even catalyze it. It's trying to bridge the digital and physical.
It really sounds like a balancing act. Using digital reach, but always pointing back towards local, physical community.
That's exactly the sense I get. Leveraging the digital, but keeping community engagement grounded.
Now, even with all this digital strategy, you mentioned they really stress the importance of physical presence. Why is that still so central?
Yeah, the document is very clear on this. It says in-person gatherings are, quote, essential for the church's identity and for certain key practices.
Like which one specifically?
They explicitly mention baptism and communion. These are seen as ordinances, key symbolic acts that just require physical presence.
Because they're tangible, physical acts.
Exactly. The imagery, the water in baptism, the shared bread and wine in communion. That physical interpersonal connection is seen as irreplaceable. You can't, they argue, replicate that fully online with the same spiritual meaning.
That makes sense. They're very embodied practices. I think I saw a Bible reference mentioned too about gathering.
Yes, Hebrews 10.25, it warns against neglecting to meet together. They use that to underline why physically assembling is so important. The guidelines state pretty clearly that a church shouldn't rely only on online gatherings. Physical presence is the ideal, the goal.
So there's a worry that if everything went online, something fundamental about being church would be lost.
That seems to be the concern. And they mention an interesting observation. Leaders doing digital care often find that as online connections deepen, people start wanting that in-person fellowship anyway.
So the digital connection fuels a desire for physical connection.
Often, yes.
Yeah.
There seems to be that basic human need for face-to-face community. That's why they don't encourage churches that are exclusively online. It doesn't quite fit their biblical understanding of church.
They brought up the Waldenses too, the historical group. How did that example fit in?
Right, the Waldenses were used to show that the church isn't necessarily tied to a building. They met secretly in homes, in nature, because of persecution, but they were still the church.
Okay.
And I link that to Matthew 18.20, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there am I among them.
Yeah.
So the gathering is key, maybe more than the specific location,
Yeah.
but they use that example to contrast with the idea of only meeting online. The implication is that while the where can be flexible, a complete lack of any physical gathering isn't really the same thing.
So it's not about the building, but it is about bodies in the same space, eventually. It's a nuanced stance. Embrace digital, but hold on to the physical core.
Exactly. Finding that balance seems crucial to their approach, using the strengths of both digital and physical for, as they put it, a holistic faith experience.
And looking ahead, do the guidelines talk about training leaders for this new landscape or wider strategy?
They do. There's a specific call for their seminaries to start teaching digital evangelism and online pastoral care.
Building it into the training from the ground up.
Right. Equipping future leaders. And they also want the local conferences and missions to train current pastors and elders, improve their digital literacy, help them minister effectively online.
That seems essential if this is the direction they're heading. What about their overall online visibility?
Yeah, there's a recommendation for the General Conference, the top level, to work with the regional divisions to make sure official Adventist content ranks well in online searches.
So when people search for spiritual topics, they find reliable Adventist resources easily.
That's the goal. Make accurate info discoverable. And also to develop better ways to connect people who find them online with an actual local church in their area.
Using the web as a bridge to local community.
Precisely. It ties back to that dual priority.
Yeah.
Embrace digital platforms to reach more people, but always focus on nurturing those personal relationships and community bonds through physical gatherings too.
A holistic spiritual experience, I think you said they called it.
That's the term they used. It really captures that blend of digital reach and physical connection they're aiming for in the 21st century.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. We've looked at these new guidelines from the Seventh-day Adventist Church. This three-phase strategy for going digital.
Right, starting with the basic platform, moving to streaming, and then to active digital pastoral care.
And we talked about how they're handling remote members, encouraging local connection first, but making careful exceptions for churches ready for digital care.
While still stressing that physical gatherings, especially for things like baptism and communion, remain absolutely essential.
It's quite a detailed plan.
It really is. And I think the bigger picture here, the so what, is seeing how a large, established global organization is trying to navigate this digital age.
Yeah, trying to adapt without losing its core identity.
Exactly. So many organizations, not just religious ones, are facing this, right? How do you connect meaningfully online? How do you use these tools authentically?
It's a challenge for sure. What can others maybe learn from this approach?
Well, maybe the importance of being strategic, having a phased approach rather than trying to do everything at once, and also that constant effort to balance the new possibilities with core, long-held values about community and connection.
That balance seems key, which leads to a final thought maybe for you listening. How is this evolving digital world going to keep shaping communities, whether they're faith groups or other kinds of mission-focused organizations?
Yeah, what's that future balance going to look like between online and in person? How will both play a role in building real connections and helping organizations achieve what they set out to do?
Definitely something to think about. Maybe reflect on your own experiences with online communities versus physical ones. How do these ideas resonate?
It's a conversation that's only going to get more relevant, I suspect.